And so the real issue is this: two words: misaligned incentives. If you pay doctors to do stuff, they will do stuff. And all of that stuff is not necessarily good for you. I don't care how expensive it is. So, so the idea is to align the incentives correctly. Once you do that, the ship rights itself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joel Irway here, and welcome to another very special episode of Experts Unleashed. I'm excited because today I've got a very special guest, Dr. Don Angle, and we're going to be talking about a shift in the way that healthcare and the healthcare industry is going. Dr. Don and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago to kind of talk and prep about this conversation, because this is something that, quite frankly, I really wasn't exposed to, aside from my personal experience with my own primary care physicians, and so we had a very, very interesting conversation. And Dr. Don is going to be talking about how what he's doing is revolutionizing the primary care physician world, and how healthcare how he's trying to change healthcare moving forward. It was a fascinating first conversation. I'm very excited to dive deep and now share a second conversation, a more enlightening conversation, now that I'm all prepped, now that I'm brought up to speed on really what he is talking about. And so I'm excited to bring him on. Dr. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joel. I really am excited about this show today.
Awesome. Well, why don't you give my listeners, give our audience just a quick 30 or 60-second background about your credentials and really what we're going to be talking about here today.
Well, it happens, Joel, that I learned how to solve the healthcare dilemma. Everybody knows healthcare in America is unaffordable, inaccessible, and just totally too expensive. But nobody has a plan to fix it. I learned a plan 25 years ago when I had a encounter with a mentor that actually told me about healthcare and how we fixed it. And we did fix it. We actually went in that company. We took that company public, listed on the NASDAQ, and ultimately we became the target of the largest healthcare company in the world at the time. And they bought us up. And then 2 months after they bought us, they had an implosion, cost them nearly $1 billion in revenue, lost opportunity. But our opportunity got stuck in the back corner, never to be brought to light again. And I was the only one who really understood it well enough to do it again. But I was worn out. I was tired. I didn't want to do it. It cost me a divorce and a lot of other money. And I just really didn't want to do it over again. And I really was afraid. And so about 4 years ago, I decided my kids can't afford my health care. And I just decided that we needed to bring it out again and do it. And so I've been working on this project, and it's coming to life now.
So explain what's broken currently. We all know it's broken, but you understand why it's broken at a much deeper
Yeah,
level, systematically.
that
And yeah,
that's a great question, because one of the most important things is clarifying why our system is broken. If you ask 12 people what the problem with healthcare is, you'll get a dozen different answers. It's the pharmacy costs are too high, or the doctors are mismanaging the system, or patients have an incentive to ask for everything, and more is better, more cost is better healthcare. That's not true. And so the real issue is this: two words: misaligned incentives. If you pay doctors to do stuff, they will do stuff. And all of that stuff is not necessarily good for you. I don't care how expensive it is. So, so the idea is to align the incentives correctly. Once you do that, the ship rights itself. It always comes back up and gets in the course that's best for the patient. And the problem right now is the primary care doctor is the only person who can do that. But the problem with the primary care doctor is he doesn't believe that he can do it. And I know that feeling well because I didn't think I could do it. When my
Mm,
mentor first told me the solution, or we discovered it together really, but he said to me that I needed to take some financial responsibility because as a provider, I was only a paid advisor. I didn't have any skin in the game, and therefore I couldn't demand excellence out of the system. But when you put a little financial responsibility to the provider, then he has incentives to do the right thing. And here's the definition of the right thing. The doctor, the primary care doctor, and the patient both have the essential incentive that they want the best medical outcome. But the patient wants the best medical outcome without going bankrupt. And we all know that
hmm
medical bankruptcies are the biggest part of bankruptcies in the United States. But if the primary care physician has some limited financial responsibility, not only does he now want the best medical outcome, but he wants it at an affordable price. And that's how we are disrupting healthcare now.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and for sake of simplicity, misaligned incentives. When you say misaligned incentives, um, I took this from our previous conversation, so I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong. But when you say misaligned incentives, this is really explaining how we are getting paid to treat, not necessarily doctors are getting paid to treat, not necessarily paid to prevent. Is that a good way to kind of simplify it, or is there a better way to
Let's
explain that?
make it simple. When a
Okay.
doctor prevents a problem, he cuts his income. Because right now he
Yep.
only gets paid to solve problems. And if he eliminates problems, he doesn't get paid. And that's what and so they don't stay up late at night worrying about a problem that they can prevent. That's the difference.
Yep.
When doctors have prevention and wellness and all of those other basic ideas that we're supplying healthcare, not sick care, then the doctor really does have a good outcome when he prevents things. When things don't go wrong, he's got the best outcome.
Right. So their primary incentives right now are to prescribe things because that's directly related to their income.
Fix things, right? Fix things with
Fix things.
prescriptions in under 8 minutes. He's in there writing those prescriptions while you're still talking. And that's not what
Yeah.
people want. It's not good for the doctor doesn't want that. And patients don't like it. The real answer is this: hey, let's have a meaningful conversation, get to the root cause, try to prevent everything possible, and solve this thing in a good way. We don't want to take out your spleen or your appendix if it's not necessary. But if it's not necessary and I get paid to do it, I'm not saying that doctors do that. They don't. But the idea is every time they prevent a problem, they hurt their income.
Yep. So let's kind of dive down this rabbit hole of how do primary care physicians really take financial responsibility, because I think this sounds very utopian in, oh, okay, well, we need to change the narrative and we need to make it so the doctors are back in the position where they are incentivized to actually do what they want to do, because I think we all can agree with this. Most doctors, they just want to help people. That's been their whole every doctor that I've met, especially primary care doctors, all they've wanted to do is just serve their patients. But now it becomes this whole convoluted mess, which, okay, well, how are they going to stay in business? Because one of the most stressful occupations and career paths on the planet, with suicides at suicide rates, at ridiculous rates. So
One a day.
how do we create a financial business model that makes sense for doctors?
Well, it's not that hard, but it is different. And physicians don't really appreciate the difference. But the difference is there's an incentive for some limited financial exposure. And when the patient and the doctor both have some limited financial responsibility, they both share the incentive to get the best outcome at the best price. And so our model puts together a financial responsibility that the physician has for his work, for his outcomes. And when he has a financial incentive for those outcomes, then he's working to prevent things that can be prevented and deal with things cost effectively, which basically is what the patient wants. He wants the best outcome, medical outcome, but he also wants to stay afloat financially when they do that. He doesn't want to spend his whole retirement on a plan that's going to keep him alive for 20 more days. But the physician is the one who can understand that. And those two are right now the only two people who are not at the table about cost of healthcare. Neither one of those doctors just don't have a clue how much an aspirin costs in the hospital. And patients can't get the message even if they try. And there are lots of examples where patients try to get how much is this going to cost me? And they can't even get it. And it's a law to give it to them now.
Yeah. So how do we, what does financially um, responsible mean? How go into a little bit more detail. Explain how this all works.
Well, so my mentor was an insurance guru. He taught insurance. He was a high ranking official in the insurance world. And basically, I didn't understand one thing, and that was how experience was calculated in healthcare insurance. And he was mentioned in an article in the paper one day, and I called him up and just said, "Hey, I am a doctor. I got more questions than answers. Can you help me? I'll buy lunch. Can you help me answer some of those questions?" And of course, he did. And we became friends. And we together set up and I don't like to hit doctors with the insurance word because it freaks them out. They don't like insurance companies, they hate people in insurance. But whenever there's a transfer of financial responsibility, that is fundamentally insurance. So the idea is if he showed me how to take some limited financial responsibility. Basically, we bought an insurance company, our group did. And when we did that, things just blew up. And it became instantly clear why this makes everything better. Because when primary care physicians have some limited exposure to the financial downside, they can do really well by practicing excellent medicine, which is what the patient needs and wants. So the patient wants to prevent those things that can be prevented. He wants to get in early. We want him to get in early if there's a problem instead of having all these financial disincentives for them to come in early. And then we want them to get their medicine and we want them to complete their treatments so that they resolve the issue completely and fully without inordinate expense. The primary care doctor is the one who knows how to do that. And he knows the technical issues with the patient, he knows the idiosyncrasies of the patient, and he knows the local lay of the land, who the best surgeon is, who's not going to over prescribe or overdo procedures that would be unnecessary. And when he has that intimate knowledge, and So for a phase the last couple of years, the insurance world has said high deductible plans will make the patient more savvy, make them a better patient. That's a bunch of cockamamie stuff. The the patient cannot be savvy, cannot compare prices, cannot get the best deal, cannot negotiate a thing. And that just puts the patient into a situation where there's more stress. Whereas the primary care physician is the only person who knows the patient, who touches the patient, who actually gets to spend time with the patient to talk about all of the options, all of the intricacies, and get the full understanding of the program that the patient should, the journey the patient that would be best for the patient. And that's how primary care doctors are. They have a lifelong relationship with the patient. They have a complete understanding of the technical issues involved, and they are the one who know the local landscape providers the best, the hospitals the best, and they can actually negotiate some pricing issues. Now, I understand doctors, they don't want to negotiate price, they don't want to do all that. We do all of that for them, but they can help. And if it's in their best interest financially, then they can help as well. So I don't want to scare doctors off because when you say the I word, they get a little they're getting upset or concerned that they have to do more work and they don't have enough time because right now they're undervalued by insurance companies, except one of them who's bought 60,000 practices in the last few years. And they just spent another $100 million for physician practices, primary physician practices last year. So the idea is so I'll save that for another discussion. But the idea is insurance companies understand the value of primary care doctors, and they're happy to pay them 15 cents on the dollar to get that value from them. But, doctors, the primary care doctor's doing all the work. Why should he work for 15% of it? He can have the whole dollar in our system.
Yep. Well, so now from a consumer standpoint, it starts to make sense, right? So if the primary care physician has a pool of money that is allocated towards um, whatever treatment or whatever method that they're trying to prescribe, now that's where the incentive comes in. Like they're financially motivated to make sure that their clients, that their patients are
Healthy.
doing everything in their power to stay healthy, right?
Yeah, right.
And when something does come up, and this is where it really started to make sense for me when we had this first conversation, from a patient standpoint, the last thing I want to do is negotiate with insurance companies. The last thing that I want to do is go walking in blind to some treatment because I have no idea how much things are going to cost. And it's like you walk in and it's almost like you're writing a blank check to God knows who. Like you really have no idea who is even going to be billing you.
You don't even know who was in the room. The cardiologist comes and visits you when you're in the ICU and you're unconscious. You don't even know he's there. And so
Right.
those are the things that your primary care doctor can do, but he doesn't get paid today to do it. Our method gets him paid, and he can make a lot of money because he's paid to take some responsibility for all of those things in the healthcare system, navigating it and being ahead of the curve on problems.
So this is referred to as the direct PCP model. Is that correct?
No, let me clarify one thing. Direct primary care doctors have got the first step up in this game. They are already taking responsibility for primary care services. Everything that can happen in their office, they can fix that problem. But if you have a surgery that's got to go to a hospital or to a surgical center, or if you have some other illness or want to deliver a baby, they do not take responsibility for those services. See, that's what we did in our model in the 90s. We basically started a direct primary care practice for employers. I wasn't smart enough at the time to name it anything, so we just called it the company doctor. But at what we figured out later was that's the direct primary care model. So those doctors are already performing a partial service. This service goes to the full growth of that system. It basically did what we did. We
Got it.
bought an insurance company to pay for those claims that came to the surgeon or to had to go to the hospital, and we
Got it.
insured that loss. This is what that does. We have an insurance model. It's basically called a segregated cell captive insurance company. And when you participate in that, you, as a physician, and it's only open to primary care physicians, you are essentially participating in your own mini insurance company inside of our bigger insurance model. That makes sense?
Got it. Yes, it does. So part of this already exists. The direct PCP industry already exists, but
Right,
now you're taking it one step further to be all encompassing on any emergency or larger scale um, expenses that come up. So out of curiosity, the existing industry, direct PCPs have already kind of taken that first step,
right.
right? What are they, know, um, what are they struggling with, right? Is there an industry problem that they're struggling with that you come in and you help solve? Like why not just stay with the direct PCP model without going broader scale?
Well, that's what they like to do right now because they did not want to be classified as insurance companies. They have to meet all kinds of regulations if they are classified as an insurance company. So that's one of the reasons they hesitate to get into this model. But the answer is we can provide all the regulatory compliance and handle all the accounting that has to happen. And once they are once their practice is in our model, they can be a part of the um, insurance company, but their walls of separations, they're segregated into a cell that's really just their practice. And so they're not responsible for Joe's practice over across town or in a different state. They are only responsible and they're graded on their practice. And their accounting is through their practice and reserves that they accumulate through their practice. And all of those models are what we take care of. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yes. Now, but why would an existing direct PCP want to consider moving to this? Is it
A couple of reasons. One, save healthcare in America, save $2 trillion, $2 trillion a year in healthcare costs, restore the middle class because health insurance has been, or healthcare has been robbing the middle class for more than 3 decades. This is a problem that's been going on for decades. To be their grateful patients want this. The direct primary care doctor has incentives that so let me tell you a couple of things about primary care and direct primary care doctors as well is they are undervalued. They are getting paid the least of all doctors, and they're technically the ones who have to know the most about the patient, who have to deal with the patient all the time. And all of that is what causes burnout that you referred to earlier. So the idea is when physicians are getting burned out, when physicians are undervalued, they get burned out. And now 70%, 7 out of 10 doctors are now owned by insurance companies or hospitals. And the reason is they're undervalued by insurance companies. They're worth the most, so insurance companies are buying them up left and right, but they get paid next to nothing. And now they're they have to get on a hamster wheel to see a patient every 8 minutes, or they can't make a living, so the problem is insurance companies have devalued primary care. And really, 40% of primary care physicians or direct primary care physicians believe that they may be irrelevant in 5 years. That's a terrible statistic. But the idea is primary care physicians have not gotten into direct primary care because the transition is a little convoluted. But direct primary care physicians don't want to get into this other model because they have a relatively good life and a decent lifestyle, and they are proud of the work that they do. Well, I'm proud of the work that they do too, but they can do more. They can change the calculus for the patient. They can make the patient get the best health care and free. Our model shows that we can give patients free health care, primary care for free. Excellent. And it's excellent because primary care physicians are now in the mode to get everything they can prevented, and everything they can deal with effectively in the front end dealt with. And so that makes our model just superior. Now, why will people not do it? Because they are concerned that they cannot do it themselves. We do it for them. We'll do it for as long as they want us to. But we generally believe that any doctor who's learned the Krebs cycle, something you have no idea about, but all the doctors in the audience will understand the Krebs cycle. If they can manage the Krebs cycle, if they can understand that, hell, insurance is nothing. And they can do primary care and balance an insurance entity. They know what to deal with. They know what to look for. We can do all the hard lifting for them. But at some time, they are going to want to do it for themselves, because the closer the physician is to the patient, the better they can manage that whole case. And they don't have to be told what's important. They know what's important. They know how to manage the patient's medical side. All they need to understand is what are the financial consequences of this. Now, let me answer a question, Joel, before you ask it. So we've had some doctors who say, well, I have a conflict of interest and I don't want to have that conflict of interest. I understand that completely. And we have a solution for the conflict of interest. What happens? Well, I withhold medical care from a patient if they need an expensive procedure, an expensive drug. Listen, insurance companies make tens of billions of dollars a month in net revenues, not gross revenues. We spend $3.7 trillion in healthcare, and we barely get anything for it compared to other economically developed countries. The idea is, in this system, you may have a conflict of interest, but the patient can sit across the desk from you. You can't go into your insurance company and you can't get a signature on a piece of paper. You get it from the support system or the support uh, clerks. There is no one that you can talk to outside of either a recording or a piece of paper. The system already has someone who has a conflict of interest, and that's the insurance company. And the reason you don't deal with them is because they don't deal with people. They deal with pieces of paper and financial accounting, and that's it. But they can deny a claim for you tomorrow at the same time.
So what I understood with um, everything you just said is, the reasons why an existing direct PCP would want to go and take the next step with this model is, number one, help fix the healthcare system. Number two, do right by their patients, um, and essentially, be a be a change agent in the overall healthcare system. Is there a lifestyle you mentioned something? I think this was referring to regular non-direct PCPs where they're on the hamster wheel of having to see a patient
Right.
every 8 minutes, right? Is there, now that we're changing the model, is there a lifestyle improvement for the primary care physician where they're not on that hamster wheel of needing to get somebody in 8 minutes and get them out the door because the next one's waiting in line? I've got 40 people today that I have to see,
Right.
right? How does that
Absolutely.
look? How does the operations look in terms of?
Great point, Joel. The answer is simple. If the primary care doctor has a care team, focus on teamwork, he can make a better system with better outcomes. He does not have to get on the hamster wheel. He's got nurses and physician assistants and social workers and a group of people that he can call upon and channel patients through and to. And the idea is with a care team, the primary care doctor can have lots of help instead of him handing somebody a copy of a diet that's been a copy of a reprint of a reprint. It He can have a nutritionist on staff. He has enough money to take all of those primary care team members on board and provide the best health care possible. And he also gets the patient better faster. And it's better than he can do. And he doesn't have to spend, uh, all night dictating charts that he should have been dictating while he was seeing patients. The idea is now he can provide a care team that is totally um, ready and totally available, and he is the quarterback and he's the one calling the shots, or she's the one that's calling the shots. And basically at that point it makes total sense to have the best care team you can afford. And you don't have to be on call 24/7. You have to be on call when the patient's needs arise to the level of the primary care doctor's full capabilities. And that's sometimes when patient goes into the ICU or into the hospital. And right now, doctors are being pushed out of hospitals by um, a bad system, which basically says hospitalists who are paid by the hospital to take in the patient will do that hospital work for them. Well, that makes the life of a PCP doctor, a primary care physician, it makes it easier because they don't have to go back and forth to the hospital. But it's terrible for the patient. The patient never has seen this doctor in the hospital. He doesn't know him. They don't know each other. There's so much missing in that transaction that it's a terrible idea. But primary care physicians do it to get some of their lifestyle back when they're busy seeing patients. Like you said, 40 patients a day on the hamster wheel for 8 minutes with each patient, giving the patient poor service, and both of them hate that system. And this system gives the doctor assistance with a care team with specialized people who have better knowledge of diet nutrition than the doctor probably has. So it's a better system for everybody.
You mentioned something that kind of triggered some curiosity in my brain because
Sure.
you talked about how when moving to this model, the PCP can now hire specialists within the practice to help make the system run smoother. You talked about hiring a nutritionist. Is there a how many it just in your estimation on a percentage basis, what percentage would you say of PCPs are understaffed with proper specialists, and that might be part of the bottleneck that's causing the hamster wheel, right? Um, is that a problem with either direct or non-direct, like not having specialists available to help delegate the right people through the right systems? Is that a problem?
For the independent physician, the one who's in that 30% mode, not the 70% mode, it's a big problem. Every one of them does not have enough resources. But the physicians who are in the 70% mode that are hospital or insurance company owned, they have all of those resources because they get all of those services. So as soon as you step into a hospital, the hospitalist is going to transfer you from one specialist to another specialist to a care team member to another care team member because that's what the hospital wants him to do. They're not interested in holding down costs. They're interested in collecting as much from that body that they can while the patient is still living. Same way with insurance companies. Insurance companies, now, this is something that I did not fully appreciate when I first started with my mentor. I didn't realize that insurance companies don't have an incentive to hold down costs. I thought that insurance companies wanted to keep costs low, and for that reason, they didn't want people to spend extra days in the hospital or do things in the hospital that were easily done as an outpatient. I just figured insurance companies were smarter than that, but they are smarter than that. They go another step. Insurance companies get paid on a cost plus basis. Whatever the cost is, tack on 20%. That's how insurance companies are paid. And so they have been smart enough, and this is an unbelievable statistic, but it's verifiable. Every year, for the last 50 years consecutively without fail, insurance costs for health insurance have gone up more greater than the rate of inflation. So if you look at the rate of inflation as it's gone up all these years, every year insurance costs for health insurance have gone up 1.7% greater. Now, do you think that's some sort of coincidence? It can't be. It's a fact. Insurance companies get paid on the cost of the care and the cost, and they're there to slow down the rate of rise, not control the total cost. And that's why the insurance companies are happy. They're part of the sector of the health of the financial sector that's done well for the last 50 years, and it never seems to get, it all goes up. I mean, last year there was a 12% increase in total cost of healthcare. And, you know, that's, that's even greater than the rate of inflation is now. But healthcare statistically has gone up more than the rate of inflation for every year for 50 years, and it hasn't stopped. Why? It's because insurance has an incentive to keep going up. And so that's why we pay the highest amount by far in the world. And for the last 3 years, we've lost statistics. We've lost the statistical advantage of gaining age's expected life. We don't have that. And we have a much less healthy population at death than other economically developed countries in this world have, and they pay far less than what we pay. How is that? Why does that happen?
Is this as simple as now, from a consumer standpoint, from a patient standpoint, rather than paying for umbrella insurance, whether it's Excel, Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever, now I'm paying through insurance through my my PCP? Is it that simple? Like I'm just now diverting those costs and going and sending my insurance what I would be paying as a premium. I'm now just paying that directly to my PCP. Is it that simple?
One simpler step, you pay 20% less up front. So our price is 20% less up front, and you don't have to pay your PCP ever again. You can go see him as much as you want. Now, we want you to respect his time and his expertise, but you get free primary care, and your insurance costs are 20% less than what you have been paying and expected to go down from there, not up.
I gotta say. So Don, we've now talked twice. It finally dawned on me that that was the model. Like, so I mean, when you start talking,
I
it can get
know
confusing, right?
it
Because
is.
if you're trying to think about it on the PCP side and the direct PCP side, then how that applies to the financial model with with the patient? Like, how does this all work? And it's like,
Right.
as I was listening, I'm like, oh, so me as the patient, now I'm just paying my PCP as the insurance provider
Right.
instead of paying a third party for insurance and then them dictating where to go, where I can and can't go in network, blah, 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 blah. And I take all responsibility for whatever and negotiating and all that other hoopla. Okay,
Right.
now
Right.
it makes sense. Now when you say your direct PCP becomes your, I'll throw in air quotes because I know that this industry doesn't like the word insurance, but if they are
Right.
the insurance provider now, you're paying the premium to your PCP. Now they're incentivized to give you the proper care and preventative care and making sure that you don't get any unnecessary care because they don't benefit from prescribing you 1,000 different drugs that you may or may not need, or sending you to go get all these expensive tests which you have no idea how much they're going to cost.
Right.
It all starts to make sense.
I know it is simple, but it's complicated because insurance companies have made insurance unnecessarily complicated. They do that for a purpose. You can't read an EOB explanation of benefits. I mean, it takes an attorney or an accountant or both to interpret what that all means. And the
Hmm.
problem is straightforward. Confusion makes people discouraged about trying to get change. It makes doctors discouraged to deal with insurance. And that's where direct primary care doctors just gave up. They said, hey, I don't want to participate in your little process anymore. I'm just going to charge my patients a flat monthly fee. They can come and give all they want. And this is why direct primary care has become more and more popular.
Mm.
Keeps doctors from killing themselves.
So describe the trend, right? Like, what is the growth rate of direct PCP? Like, what's the industry seeing right now? And are insurance companies, are they nervous about it?
No. Insurance companies insurance companies are so big and they make so much money that it's hard to even fathom how much money. Listen, I was just reading United Health Group. Now they're the largest health insurance group in the country. I was reading a financial statement for their third quarter, just came out a few days ago, and they've managed to pay their investors $10.5 billion dollars in dividends. Now, I was the CEO of a publicly traded company, and I can tell you, you do everything you can with the money that you make in your company. The last thing you do is reimburse your investors money as dividends. So you buy all the stereo, tactile, anything that you want and pay your administrators billions of dollars, and you can then go spend that money on dividends. And now, and doctors just don't get that, and insurance companies don't have us on their radar. And frankly, I'd rather keep it that way for as long as possible. But
Mhm.
I do think that primary care physicians ought to take note. They're being forced into captive work by insurance companies and hospitals. Their lives are getting miserable because they don't see another alternative to this model. But if they join our movement, they can and will see a change in healthcare. And if you're a patient, you can tell your doctor about this and let him investigate it. Because if a patient sees this interview and wants to have this, he's going to have to go to his doctor and say, why aren't you in this? And if enough patients do it, doctors will do it. The only reasons doctors don't do it with us is because they can't believe that they can manage their own mini insurance company. But I say it again because I want to reinforce this to doctors. We'll do all the work. You don't have to do anything. Just practice excellent medicine. That's all you have to do. And then we will
Mhm.
support you in terms of back office care team. And that's what we will do because we want you to have the best outcomes. Now, we charge you for that, but it's a fair charge and you can take it over as soon as you're up to it. You get scale. You want to, you have 10 patients. You may not want to do it when you have 1,000 patients. It's certainly worth you doing it, and you can have a manager do it for you. But the idea is straightforward. This is something that can only be done by the primary care doctor, and that's why. And he's equipped to do it. I know when we were doing it, I was stunned by our doctors who came up and said, they'd grab me for lunch and say, "Hey, we need to get rid of this group that we're referring to. They're not the best group, or we need to do this procedure because this procedure is easy and we're spending a fortune to get it done. So we can bring cost containment back into the whole model, and it's it's something where the incentives are right. And you don't have to chase down doctors with pre authorization forms. You don't have to deny their claims. You don't have to downcode their claims. This is something that doctors will do on their own. They'll save America trillions of dollars and they'll make a lot of money for doing it. Oh, let me answer one more question you haven't asked me. But
Yep.
listen, there's something doctors understand. It's called social determinants of health. That's something that's not in the direct control of doctors who are in any healthcare model. Yet we can save enough money to fund a food bank. We can save enough money to fund giving somebody a prescription that they couldn't afford. Those are the kinds of things that doctors cannot do now. Insurance companies don't dream of doing it, yet it helps the patient with at least 50% of the total cost that they have to face. And so, by just covering some of the determinants of health, social determinants of health, we can improve that 50% factor of that healthcare of that individual, that patient.
Let me ask you something. So, I know you have an incentive for existing, for anyone who wants to implement this next step of a direct PCP model. Explain what that is real quick, and then I have one final question for you that I've been anxiously, actually two final questions. So, talk about the incentive that you've got because I think it's fascinating because this is your mission to help direct PCPs take that next step, become their own, build in their own insurance companies, so they can deliver better healthcare. Explain your incentive briefly.
So, in order to write policies against you have to have reserves, and you have to put those reserves up in the form of collateral. And we will put up those uh, collateral forms. Now, it's a $50,000 hit, it's cost, but 40,000 of that is directly funding your reserves. Once you have that, and 10,000 goes to set it all up and working capital for the corporation. So the idea is we will lend you that $50,000 up front. And, part of it is hopefully you're a good doctor and you don't spend it all in the first 2 weeks. But, I think most doctors are pretty smart. They understand that they need to keep people healthy and they have the opportunity to do what's best for their patients and themselves in a limited form and fashion. But there's so much wasted money in healthcare that we can save $1 trillion just on the waste itself. And the growth and the waste is something that we think we can achieve. And the incentives for the best prices and that kind of thing are built into the second $1 trillion. In any event, we can do social determinants of health, pay the doctors more, and let them write policies against their reserves as their reserves grow, and we'll fund the first 50,000 for them. They'll pay some small interest fees, but that's it. Is that explain it clearly enough?
Yeah, so that helps people, get that comfort level of like building that up, that initial reserve that an
Right.
insurance company would need in case of, high cost, medical expenses or claims.
And the other issue is we have set up reinsurance. Now, reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies, and the idea there is we want to be able to make people comfortable that we are a legitimate insurance company, have regulatory requirements met, and audits met in the specific states that we're operating in.
Now, when somebody does start to migrate over to a direct PCP model, or even from direct PCP to this this model that you're supporting, does it have to be all in one fell swoop? Like, do they have to try and convert all their patients into this model, or can they do it in baby steps? Meaning, pitch it to one patient at a. I say pitch it, but
Sure.
explain it to one patient at a time. How does that transition work?
Great. I wanted you to ask this question because what it here's the answer. Insurance companies are the bane of doctors. They make doctors skin crawl because they're unreasonable, unfair, and have total control. And they can't ever get any satisfaction. Most of the time, they can't get any satisfaction at all. So the insurance company that's your worst nightmare, you want to put them on the chop as a new doctor in this system. You want to put that patient's insurance company on the chopping block, and you want to go to all of your patients and say, "Hey, you've got this uh, ugly insurance company, and we don't want to do business with them anymore. But we have an option for you, which is basically this: we will give you 20% off. We're state regulated and audited, and we're legitimate. And the idea is if you do not, um, if you want to stay with me as a physician, you have to get a new insurance carrier because we're dropping your insurance company. And we have this other option, and it's 20% cheaper. At the same time, it's not only 20% cheaper, you get all my services free. So that's the pitch that they could give their existing patients that belong to an insurance company that they're not fond of.
All right, so Dr. Don, final question.
Sure.
Okay, from a consumer standpoint, from a patient standpoint, let's say there's somebody listening right now and they're attracted to this model. They want to move their care over to a PCP or a direct PCP or somebody who's following this model. Is there a directory that they can search for, or do they need to pitch it to their PCP and say, "Hey, would you consider doing this model?" Where can somebody go and find someone that follows this model?
Well, we have a website. It's 3p.insure, but I'm afraid we don't have a roster of people up there right now. What we want patients to do is to introduce their primary care physicians or direct primary care physicians to this model. And that when doctors hear it from their patients, they understand there's a movement, and we think that will make them interested. They can hear it from us and they can hear it from their patients. That makes them think there might be a market for it. But the idea is the patient can introduce their physician to Primary Physician Partners Insure, or 3p.insure on the web, INSURE. They can do that, and their physician can get the insight, contact us, and we can start the consequence of. I mean, right now, what we're doing is we're giving an event, a webinar event, to basically say, this is what we're doing, this is how it affects you, this is all the details, and then they can start looking at providing we're asking them to just sign a non-binding letter of intent right at this moment because we have to have a minimum number of participants in the country to be able to offer to be able to acquire the reinsurance is the basic issue. So patients can help by just informing their doctors.
Yeah. Uh, I've learned a ton through our second conversation, through this conversation, because it's a complex topic. It's a complex situation. Healthcare is enormous, and we all recognize that there is a lot of problems on all sides of the coin, and so it does become a murky navigation to try and figure out what that solution is. And I think we have come to a conclusion. I think we've come to a clear resolution of what that potential solution is. I think it's a fascinating proposal. Um, I think it makes complete sense with why the PCP, why it's in the best interest of everyone involved, aside from the external insurance companies, why it's in the best interest of everyone that matters
Right.
involved, to put the financial liability on the service provider, on the financial or the primary care physician, and I'm excited to kind of see this take take charge and see this momentum and this movement grow. And so, are there any other links that you want to share where people can go reach out to you, where they can, possibly explore what it takes to take that first step as a direct PCP? Is it the links that you already shared, or are there other spots?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so they can go to LinkedIn and find me there. But the idea, and I've written a few articles, especially complicated articles like how physicians don't understand any of this and breaking it down for them. So they can find me on LinkedIn or the website, and I'll be happy to uh, speak with them. We'd like to introduce them to this whole idea with a series of letters so we can kind of educate them in a fashion that they can comprehend. Because once you understand a few basic things, it's really not hard to understand, but those basic things are important. It's like it's what's the cause of this problem? Is it really pharmacy benefits managers that are making all this money? Which I think there's definitely some guilt to go around there. Is it insurance companies that have tuned this system to their own benefits? Sure. Is it doctors who have been exploiting Medicare, Medicaid? Who knows? I imagine that's true too. But the idea is this: you must know something about the system, and we can send them a series of emails. Then we can invite them to a webinar and let them ask all the questions they can ask. And like you, it does take one or two exposures to try to sink in because it is complicated. It's unnecessarily complicated. And frankly, one of the only people who can solve it is a primary care doctor because he's in that sort of quarterback position, not getting paid to do it. Right now, he's not getting paid to be a quarterback. He's getting paid to get sacked. And at this point, we ought to get better at it. We ought to get better at this whole thing. And this is a solution that my mentor taught me. I'm convinced God put him right in front of me because he was the right person at the right time and just graciously gave me a lot of insight.
Dr. Don, I appreciate your insights, appreciate your time. And if you're listening right now, I encourage you to go reach out to Dr. Don Engel and inquire more about what it takes to take these steps to in the direct PCP world, and possibly exploring the opportunity of bettering the healthcare system and being a participant in being a change activist. So it's
Amen.
been great. I appreciate your
Change.
time. Yes.
Thank you, Joel. You're
All
making
right.
history. I keep pointing that out to you. I appreciate you.
All right. Take care, and we'll see you around on the next episode.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.